Homosexual history begins with the earliest known accounts of same-sex love and sexuality in ancient civilizations. The distinctions between what are now called homosexual and heterosexual relationships were not seen in ancient societies, hence labels like LGBTQ+ were not necessary. Back then, there was only us, and whoever one chose to love was one's own business. But this doesn't mean that people who fell in love with the same gender didn't suffer. So the question is, did homosexuals encounter any problems back then? Let's find out. Homosexuality around the world. Well, the position of oneself and one's partner was the only stigma associated with romantic interactions between men. In ancient Greece, Rome, and other societies, a freeman who played the part of the woman in a romantic connection was seen as having betrayed his masculinity. Nonetheless, the relationship itself received little consideration. Due to the complete non-issue of sexual identity, ancient writers frequently ignored an individual's sexual orientation unless it had some relevance to the event they were discussing. In Mesopotamia, same-sex relationships were frequent and were associated with the phrase cradle of civilization. According to evidence from literature and artwork, they are shown equally alongside couples of the opposite sex. But did you know that in ancient Mesopotamia, a popular Mesopotamian goddess Inanna was followed by transgender and bisexual clergymen before rising to fame as Ishtar? Yes, the priests and priestesses of the goddess Inna were all homosexuals. The goddess's transformational power, her capacity to change men into women and women into men, was one of her most revered attributes. On top of this, it is said that her father, the god Enki, created a third gender, neither male nor female, who served as Inanna's clergy. In connection with this, the concept of non-binary gender was first identified more than 3,000 years ago as a third gender made possible by divine will. The document, the Almanac of Incantations, which includes prayers for both opposite-sex and same-sex couples, makes it evident that the gods also favored same-sex relationships. All over the world, homosexuality has been a normal practice since ancient times. We have the transgender clergy of the cult of Inanna in ancient Mesopotamian, the Native American tribes and their two-spirit people, the Duke and his courtier in ancient China, the elite force of gay lovers in Greece, the gay king of Egypt Pepi II, the third gender of the Kinnar in India, gay relationships in Japan, the Roman ideals of masculinity and same-sex relationships, the Celtic warriors and their male lovers, homosexuality and Christianity, distinctions regarding sexual identity, and the banning of same-sex relationships did not emerge until the development of Christianity, which disapproved of customs linked to pre-existing religious beliefs. The behavior that non-Christians engaged in, including making sacrifices to pagan gods or going to non-Christian religious festivals, was being criticized at that time, not same-sex relationships. Not only were the terms homosexual and heterosexual not invented until 1869 CE, but there are no equivalents in the ancient languages either. Going into more detail, the term homosexual in the Bible is derived from the Greek word arsenokoites, which was first used in 1946 CE. St. Paul first used it in his epistles, 1 Timothy 1 verse 10 and 1 Corinthians 6 verse 9. The term male beds is the literal translation. It appears to be referring to men who, in non-Christian traditions, shared beds with other men rather than same-sex couples. The irony of the current divides in society over sexual identity and the cry for a return to traditional values is that, for more than 2 millennia, same-sex relationships were clearly accepted, respected, and even revered. The terms homosexual and heterosexual are 19th century inventions, first used in an 1869 pamphlet by Austrian author Karl Maria Kirchbeny to criticize the Prussian sodomy law, which outlawed same-sex partnerships. Stories of many people whose sexuality is minimized or disregarded throughout history, both ancient and modern, are told because for centuries following the spread of Christianity, homosexuality was viewed as a disgraceful sin. Before the 19th and 20th centuries, no discussion of Plato, Alexander the Great, or any other famous historical figure focused extensively on their sexuality. These days, this paradigm has improved and makes it possible to comprehend the past and the historical contributions made by the homosexual community on a deeper and wider level. The stigma. The Bible, as all Christians and Catholics know, condemns idolatrous behavior, or homosexuality. Theologian Justin R. Cannon explains that the Greek word arsenokoites, which means male beds, and appears to have been coined by St. Paul the Apostle about men who slept with men in pagan cultures, is what caused Christianity to have such an impact on so many cultures. It is not the translation that caused this impact. Although the word male beds was originally understood by European translators to mean sodomites or sexual perverts, it appears that Paul was referring to what he perceived to be a common practice among non-Christians. Romans 1 verses 24 to 27, which condemns same-sex relationships, is one of the most frequently cited biblical passages today. It describes how men and women gave up natural relations for unnatural and committed shameless acts. However, when read in the context of the entire passage, this should be understood as referring to idolatrous behavior, such as acting like pagans did at orgies, rather than a committed gay relationship. Another often quoted passage, Leviticus 18 verse 22, "Thou shalt not lie with a man as with a woman, it is an abomination," does not allude to that type of relationship either. Rather, it simply expresses the Roman disapproval of a man who played the passive role in sex. The reference to pagan sexual practices was eventually understood as homosexuality in the 1946 Revised Standard Version of the Bible, after later European Bible translators saw it as deviation. Before that time, the word does not appear in the Bible. When taken in context, the Bible passages that are currently used to support the opposition to same-sex relationships condemn the sexual immorality that was a feature of pre-Christian beliefs, as well as those that existed at the same time as Christianity. In line with his understanding of Jesus Christ's mission, Paul exhorts his readers to reject a variety of cultural customs and practices and embrace new ones. He does not specifically call attention to same-sex relationships as immoral. Indeed, some academics, including the Bishop John Shelby Spong, have proposed that Paul's allusion to his homosexuality, which he appears to have battled, is the meaning of his thorn in the flesh, 2 Corinthians 12 verses 6 to 7. It has also been noted that the biblical account of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is also commonly cited as evidence against homosexuality, actually serves as a lesson in the value of hospitality. This was the interpretation of the story by the early Christian scholar Origen, as well as by church fathers like St. Ambrose. These authors claimed that the sin of the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah had nothing to do with their sexual orientation and was instead caused by their disobedience to the established laws of hospitality. Even though there is proof that pre-Christian cultures had unfavorable personal attitudes toward homosexual behavior, these attitudes appear to have been based on a man's loss of virility and manhood, a young woman's loss of virginity, or, in the case of some Roman historical periods, extreme licentiousness and promiscuity. But rather than criticizing same-sex relationships in general, these criticisms concentrated on people's actions. One's private romantic relationships were one's affair, pursued freely, and accepted by others as just another manifestation of human sexuality. Invisibility, discrimination, and remaining in the closet. The invisibleness that gay men and lesbians face in our relationships is another challenge. The deliberate removal of historical allusions to lesbianism and homosexuality has obscured the history of lesbians and gay people. The forces that drive many lesbians and gay men to hide their sexual orientation, including the fear of violence, harassment, and discrimination, are what keep lesbian and gay men invisible. In addition to normalizing heterosexuality and heterosexual relationships, the enforced invisibility of lesbian and gay male sexualities and relationships feeds the myth that lesbianism and homosexuality are perverse and deviant, while heterosexuality is natural and normal. In addition to feeding societal prejudice against lesbians and gay men, this also contributes to their oppression. In an attempt to fit in with the socially prescribed heterosexual ideal, some lesbians and gay men are also motivated by the normative status of heterosexuality to deny their sexual identities, sometimes for a long time, and to enter into unhappy and unfulfilling heterosexual relationships. Lesbians and gay men are under increased social pressure to stay hidden, to hide their true identities in relationships. This is an emotionally and psychologically harmful experience for a lot of people. So the lack of legal protection for gays and lesbians, as well as for our relationships, has far-reaching effects beyond the immediate denial of a benefit. Lesbians and gay men may find it difficult to live full lives and be honest with those who are important to them, and their self-confidence and self-esteem may be damaged. In an ideal world, everyone should be given the chance to love whoever they want. And while our society still has a long way to go, hopefully shortly, we can collectively diminish this stigma. How about you? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and make sure to give them a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories from history.